All right. Hello, everybody. This is Patrick Ray. I am the CEO and founder of CanopyBoulder, and I'm psyched to have you all on the webinar with us today. So thank you for coming. The plan today is talk a little bit about the accelerator and then also do a how to pitch session. So during the program, we're going to do 50 plus education sessions and mentor sessions. Uh, how to pitch is an example of an education session that we've run since we started back in 2015 with the accelerator. We've now done 11 cohorts, sort of can wake up in the middle of the night and do it nowadays. So we're gonna go through that session, give you a little example of how we deliver and educate the teams in our program. So without further ado, let's do a little bit of an intro on CanopyBoulder. So we have raised and managed 7 venture capital investment funds since we launched. Over $15 million in total capital raised into those funds from over 100 investors, and we've made over 130 investments now. We're often the first and sometimes the second investor in the companies that we invest in, specifically through the accelerator. And we made those 130 investments into 100 plus companies now, mostly ancillary products and services, but more recently we've added CBD and hemp. Our teams have gone on to raise more than 60 million now. I think we're nearing 100 million from outside investors, and serving over 20,000 customers with the help of 200 plus mentors, and those companies are now worth well over $200 million. People always ask us, what are some of the success stories? Give us some examples of companies that you're investing in. So here's some examples. Work is the dominant payroll processing company in the cannabis industry. BBS Analytics, the dominant data service provider. Bloom Automation has robots developed for processing and trimming of cannabis that are going into market now. PotGuide is .com is a bit of a sleeper. I think it's like the top 5 traffic generator for dispensaries from consumers. Green Screen's leading screen company. Sana Packaging doing hemp-based and ocean plastic packaging. And then Peak Beyond and Click MJ are also doing services for dispensaries. Like I said, we've made CBD and hemp investments in the last year or so with our latest fund, which was oversubscribed. Companies that we're investing in, as you can see, a number of brands in the CBD space, but we've also invested in the company that just won a license to process and sell hemp-based products in China, and they are the first North American company to win such license. So we're in the mix, we're active, and we're writing checks into companies in the early stages where many venture capital firms in the cannabis industry are stepping away and focusing only on growth. We have a small but a mighty team. It's a real core, a strong core. Myself, I have background in venture capital, investment banking, strategic management consulting, operating companies in the natural organic foods industry and dietary supplement alternative health, very Boulder thing. Bob is an 8-time CEO for startups either launching or turning around with experience in technology, cryptocurrency, and now coming into cannabis, also some hardware experience there. And then Celia runs investor relations and is our marketing manager. She came from Cerna and is just a whiz with everything related to marketing and communications, and sort of make sure that everything runs smoothly here at CanopyBoulder, and also has a lot of connects into the investor community as well as our alumni group. Again, here are some of the companies and the different verticals in which we've been investing. So what is the program? It's a 13-week program, in-person program in Boulder, Colorado. These are some pics from the office and programs itself. So there's an open space for collaboration and work. There's some offices that we have for meetings. We have conference rooms, phone booths, little cubbies for people to work. and get things done. That picture in the bottom right is from our Mentor Madness event, where we bring in 40, 50, 60 mentors and do a bit of a speed dating thing early in the program to help the teams launch and get some help. That Mentor Madness really is the kickoff of our mentorship-based program, where we're connecting entrepreneurs not only with industry professionals that might help them with their traction, but also folks who are experts from inside and outside the industry who are going to help them make all the decisions that they need to and be that helpful hand. These mentors are giving of their time. They're not paid, but it is something that is incredibly valuable. We couldn't run CanopyBoulder without them. We have a structured program designed around the cohort's needs. So it's like I said, 13 weeks. Every week has a theme, whether that's marketing or HR or sales or finance or venture capital, that every team goes through. And we've yet to have a team, no matter how experienced they have been in the past with startups, that hasn't gotten a lot of value out of the program. It's a rigorous program. We follow the Techstars model, where there's structure and there's recommended reading and assignments and education sessions and mentor sessions. But that's not the only program. We also have a program designed to the needs of each company, right? So we've got the structured program and a customized program. And this customized program is a program that we'll develop with the teams before they come into the accelerator to make sure that we're all on the same page, right? That we're all driving towards the same goal, whether that's launching the product, building the team, raising the capital, or going to market, or something else, right? And we want to make sure that we share that vision and the goals, and that we can help the teams achieve that vision and goal. So like I said, there's a theme curriculum. Every week has a different theme. The idea is that by the end of the program, you've covered every area of the foundational area of your business. And you're not only have a plan in place conceptually, but you have timelines, you have an org chart, you have financial modeling, and you've got some data on what's the best way to market, what's the best way to sell, right? What's the best financial model that you need to build for your business, or how are you going to raise money, and how's that customized to the needs of your business, all right? Assignments and resources, like I said, every week we'll have recommended reading. There's assignments to, say it's marketing, you got the marketing plan, the team comp plans, all that stuff put together, and it all sort of is very cohesive. That's I think the key is, pulling together the business so that it's super cohesive, logical, and there's no question that you're going to be asked that's not going to, that you're not going to be able to answer. Like I said, we have all these mentor presentations. They consist of a 30-minute presentation and 30 minutes of Q&A. So they're quick, they're direct, but you're going to get to engage with the CEO of Native Roots, the president of Live Well, the founder of FlowHub, right? People that have been there before, been there, done that, and they can give you better better feedback and information about the journey you're on than anybody else. And then we wrap up the program with demo days and investor previews, right? Most of the teams need to raise capital. So we've had built up a large database of investors that are interested in the cannabis industry. And what we're going to do is, as we get closer to our investor previews or the road show that we go on and the demo day, we're going to start making introductions to investors directly. So you get that warm intro to the person who is sort of making investments in the industry to give you the best chance of being successful in raising capital that you can get anywhere. And we'll do multiple investor previews. We'll do a webinar online. We might go to New York or San Francisco, or it really depends on where industry events are happening and how we can sort of saddle up our investor previews to be where the investors are at that time. The other thing that's really important about the program is it's not just like, one size fits all. It's very customized in many elements. And one of those ways that we stay on track with the custom programs, we have weekly one-on-one team meetings. So our staff is going to meet with your team on every week, and we're going to focus just on what's going on, right? Do you need more introductions? Has that mentor not responded? Are you ready to go raise capital? Are you trying to make a decision about a key hire? Or do you have a specific question about your financial model that we need to work through that's not in front of everybody else, that's very private, confidential, related just to you? And then the last thing is we host community events. We know that it takes a village to get these companies off the ground and to be successful. So we're active in not only bringing people into our office and running having events, happy hours, educational sessions, but we're also going elsewhere in the Colorado market. I talked about getting ready for investor previews and demo days. That requires pitch practice. So here's a few shots from what pitch practice looks like in our office. We'll do this on a Monday afternoon, so you get it done out of the way in the week. But the basic structure is a 5-minute pitch, right? Where you're hitting on all the key elements and get it done in 5 minutes. And then all the other people in the cohort, maybe some mentors, alumni, maybe some investors come in, some friendly investors, all friendlies will come in and they'll put on their investor cap, and we'll do a couple minutes of investor Q&A. So the audience is asking questions as if they're investors. And then we take those hats off, we put on the feedback hat, we say, look, love what you did here, but this needs work, or I saw a typo on slide 7. The idea is repetitions, right? You need to have, to be a successful entrepreneur and be able to raise capital, you need to practice. You need to do your pitch over and over and over again and get questions that you never really thought of and have that practiced as well. Okay, so we'll do that every week. Last thing I want to mention about our program, or key thing, is our partnership with the ArcView Group. And that's a partnership that's now, we signed that partnership in, I think, early 2015. Our companies get exposure into the ArcView Group network of investors. That's over 600 accredited dues-paying. They pay dues, and they're accredited investors interested in the cannabis industry. And right now, there are a lot of the funds focused on growth stage companies, not as many on the early stage. So it's real key to be close with a group of angel investors, which ArcView in many ways is. So what do we look for when we are assessing and trying to choose who the companies are that will come into our program? Team. Top 3 reasons for bringing in a company, a team, is team. Do you have the potential to be successful? Do we agree with your vision of success? Can we get on board? Do we feel like you're going to be able to navigate the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur? The second thing is exit potential, right? If this business, you're going to work, day in, day out, and you're going to grow a business that's going to generate revenues of $250,000 a year, it's hard to imagine a big exit for an investor, right? So we want these businesses that are applying and that we're going to invest in to have at least a reasonable chance of a very good exit for not only the founders and all the team members, but also all the investors. The market size opportunity, right? If you're solving for a problem that is really only your problem, it's not a big market opportunity, right? But if it's a problem that the significant percentage of the population, whether that's consumers or business, then you have a good chance of growing a large business to have a big exit. We like to see traction even in the early stages. So, it used to be that we'd bring in more conceptual idea companies, but now we want more traction, right? The market's more competitive. We're investing more money. We want stronger teams that are proving out traction. We love to hear that an entrepreneur's gone on a listening tour and spoken to a number of the people who fit the profile of their customer base now or in the future, and that they've proven that it's a good time for them to launch this business. Right? It's very easy for an entrepreneur to have a great idea and start too early. And it's easy also for an entrepreneur to say, hey, that's a good idea because that company is doing really, really well. But it's very more challenging to find that business idea at the right time that not everybody is diving into, where you have a real competitive advantage, right? And you can develop some early traction. Competitive landscape's important as well. I mentioned where there's not a lot of people already jumping in. A good example of a relatively competitive space is media. Whereas everybody, not only just in cannabis, but also in mainstream media, is liking to cover the cannabis industry because it gets clicks, right? So it's relatively crowded space. It really has to have a team of exceptional background and experience that is going to be able to have some unique characteristic in their business, going to help them break through the clutter there. It can be done, but it's harder, right? Intellectual property is another thing that we look for, a team that has a plan for their IP, right? Anything that's going to help them to develop what we call a moat that is going to protect their business from competitors and people coming in that want to take their market share. And then finally, we want this business to be disruptive. And that's a word that gets thrown around way too much. But a disruptive business is one that captures people's attention, that solves a real problem and takes them in a new direction and makes that company even more valuable and makes it sticky long-term because it's made a change in their customer's business and the company cannot live without it going forward. So process and timing, right? Now is the time. We had 6 or 7 meetings and calls yesterday with folks who have already applied, and we're able to spend a lot of time with them. So, but the application deadline is the 25th. You go on CanopyBoulder.com and on the front page, you can find the link to apply. You request an application. We send you, we do an initial review. If we like it, we're gonna request a full application and a pitch deck. We're gonna do an initial interview with you. We'll do a team review. If we like it even more, we're gonna start talking about your visions and goals. We're gonna dig into due diligence, meaning we're gonna vet all the assumptions that you're speaking of. And we're also gonna talk to people in the industry to understand if they have interest in this solution that your company is going to provide, or the problem that you're solving for is real, painful, and something they want to pay for right away. And then we're going to start talking about the offer. And we have a pretty standardized offer with CanopyBoulder. We have a little room for negotiation, but the guardrails are very much there. So like many accelerators, our offer is quite standardized because we're doing a lot of investments. So we'll do 10 companies per cohort. So we don't have a lot of time and energy, or frankly, capital to pay for lawyers to go back and forth 50 times negotiating a Series A. We're early stage, we're okay with the risk, but we have standardized documents, which are based off the Techstars documents, which are sort of the gold standard and actually quite founder friendly. So let's skip to, so maybe I should, I'm gonna actually take a pause here as we're 17 minutes in. I'm gonna look at the questions that have come in. So we're asking, okay, do we need to spend big dollars in third-party research prior to joining the program? I would say no. My advice for doing market research prior to coming to the program is to just pick up the phone, go show up, find out if the customer base that you have, whether that's dispensary or cultivation or whatnot, if you can target those customers, I think you can learn a lot in 10 conversations, right? If it's consumers that you're trying to attract and serve, you know, that might be a little more expensive, but today there are more tools to survey consumers than ever. One resource is going to Reddit, right? Posting a survey and getting into a Reddit feed, right? Google has options. Facebook, there's a lot of platforms that have options that allow you to collect consumer research. Let's see. We plan to launch products in January 2020. How would that be impacted if you became part of the accelerator program? You know, look, you want to launch and have it be a successful launch. And entrepreneurship can be a very lonely journey if done by yourself. So it's very helpful to have folks that are out there that are invested, that are on the team, that are going to help you work through the things that you can't think of everything, right? So, you know, doing a launch in January 2020, we might find in the due diligence that you shouldn't launch, or that you should launch. If you have a team that can handle the launch, that's great, let's launch, right? And that's where the custom program really comes into play. We have the standardized program, and that the standard sort of program that everybody goes through, I think we've calculated the number of hours per week that the program requires. It's about 11 hours, right? So it's not, I mean, it's about a fifth of your work week. So that helps, I think, put things in perspective. Certainly there's more work that needs to be done always than you ever imagine. But if we go through our due diligence, we like the idea, we like the team, and the custom program is a go-to-market, then that's the custom program. So we're going to help you with introductions. We're going to help you we might even sit on your calls to give you a feedback with these potential customers to tweak the pitch. We might have mentors who are going to be your beta customers, right, to go to market. So we can help in all dimensions. It really is just, can we all get on the same page? So I hope that answers your question. So the last question I'll answer we got in here is, how complete should our pitch decks and business plans be? Do they have to be completed before we apply? No, not at all. I mean, it's the further along you are, the better, right? But really, we're not asking for a business plan. Pitch decks are, as all you need to be able to prepare a classic, 80-page business plan that's printed off and bound at your local Kinko's. The investors don't read those anymore. They want a pitch deck and they want a conversation. They want to sort of roll through the content of your plan that way. So no, it doesn't have to be complete, but part of the objective of this presentation is to help you come up with that really complete and tight pitch deck. So a great transition to our first slide in the how to pitch presentation. So again, this is something that's been developed over the last 11 cohorts, last almost 5 years of CanopyBoulder. I even started it. I didn't create this from scratch, borrowed it from an investor forum that I was a part of that they used to give to their incoming companies, and we've tweaked it to the needs of the cannabis industry. This has been a very successful template for pitching. I think we've won probably 15 or so. Our alumni companies have won 15 or so pitch competitions. It just works. And I think the reason it works is that it focuses on the storytelling and the narrative that you have for your business. So let's jump into it. What we're going to talk about today is the types of decks and docs that you need, key slides, how to increase engagement, do's and don'ts, and then actually we're going to not do 5, 6, and 7 in the interest of time, but that's something we'll go into follow up, how to do a 2-minute pitch, and then what kind of investor communication do you need to be focused on after you've got your investors. So first question is, who is pitching? We've seen teams try to do the 2-person pitch. Seen teams try to have the CEO not pitch. The first thing you need to decide is who's going to be the pitch lead on your team. That probably should be the CEO. If it's not, that becomes something that is different or exceptional, but in the wrong way. So you need to work through why the CEO won't be pitching. If that's the case, entrepreneurs, be honest with you, the investors like to see the CEO pitch. So hopefully that is you. We don't recommend the 2-person pitch. It can be a little bit wonky. So 4 docs that you need to be thinking about as an entrepreneur: the investor pitch deck, the public demo day pitch deck, the investor leave behind deck, and an executive summary. These are the 4 docs. We're going to be mostly focusing on the investor pitch deck, right? The investor pitch deck is going to be a 5-minute pitch, mostly visual, not a lot of numbers or words on the slide deck, mostly images that you're going to narrate. The public demo day pitch deck is going to be like your investor pitch deck, but without the financial information, the investment ask, use of funds, because if you're not pitching to a known audience of accredited investors, you're doing a public solicitation, and that is something your lawyers are not going to want you to do. The investor leave behind deck, that's like your business plan in PowerPoint. That can be the 50, 60 slide deck where you have 7 slides on marketing and go to market as opposed to just 1, all right? Or 6 slides on your financials, calling out KPIs and numbers you're going to pay particular attention to as opposed to just 1 slide, right? And then the executive summary is usually a 1 or 2-page document that is something you can carry in your briefcase and hand to investors that you meet. It has contact information, all the key information, just on a one sheeter. So let's talk about this investor pitch deck. Really, this is an exercise in the art of storytelling. Practice makes you prepared. Doesn't necessarily make it perfect, but you will be prepared, and that's something we want you to focus on. In your investor pitch deck, we really want you to utilize a slide order to facilitate your storytelling. and use big visuals, right? Not numbers and letters and words. Those just distract the investors from you, where we want them to focus, okay? So here they are, key slides. I'm gonna walk through them. The first slide we want to see is, or recommend seeing, is an intro grabber slide. This is something that is a personal anecdote, a shocking statistic, or something that's just gonna grab people's attention, right? Because what you want is the investor not to be looking at their phone, not to be tempted to grab their phone and check their email or the sports scores or whatever it is. You want them focusing on you, so you gotta start by grabbing their attention. The second thing that we want you to do is to state the problem. And you want to state that problem in a couple of slides, even maybe. You want to state the problem and then turn the knife, right? You want to highlight the problem, whether it's the size or the speed and the growth, the problem, the depth, and how this is a critical need for businesses or consumers, not just a want, and make it so that the investor and the audience is listening to this and just like dying, getting to the point where they're just like begging for you to then go reveal the solution, right? And if it's a physical problem, this is where you have the bar stool with the napkin over the product, you lift the napkin up and there's the product, right? Or it's a demo of your software that you have a screen capture video behind you that you narrate what's going on, right? So you can see how we flow into the demo and the reveal of the product. And once you've done, you've got their attention, stated the problem, quantified that, turned the knife, introduced and revealed the solution or done a demo, the investors are going to be like, wow, this is great. I'm in. And their next natural question is like, who built this? Who's on the team? So that's when you talk about your great team and how they're capable and what they can do and where they come from and why they have the right to win. The next natural question is like, okay, so what? We got all this information now. We know the team's good. What have you done so far? That's where we start talking about traction. And so that's initial traction to date, which sets up the next slide, which is go to market going forward. So you've done these things, you've got this following, you got beta customers and some, but now what's next, right? So how do you go to market with this solution that everybody needs right now, yesterday? It's a need, not a want. And how do you go to market and deliver that product or solution to your customer base? Once you do that, the investors want to know how you make money, right? So that's where you introduce your financial summary slide. And that's typically a slide, a bar chart that shows, or a line chart that shows revenues going up and to the right, profits being negative, then coming back up. Maybe you throw in some key milestones there, but really what you want to speak to is how your company makes money. And the financial summary chart is the visual that sort of, the visual behind that narrative. So once you've shown them all these things, the traction, the team, how you're going to go to market, how you make money, it's the investors, right? They want to know, what do you need and how are you going to use it? So that's the investment ask, use of funds slide. Next, we want to get them out of the numbers and get back to the vision, right? So we want to start talking about timeline. And we also want to help them understand that you've already been doing a lot of work here that has reduced the risk of this investment for the investor, right? So we've got a risk reduction slide, which is like a combination of a Gantt chart and that sort of calls out risk declining over time for this business based on the work that you've already done. So it sets a trajectory. It shows the investors what you've already accomplished and how that de-risks the investment, and then what the next steps are, right? How you're going to use that money, that use of funds, to continue to reduce the risk and grow the business. Get back into the vision, out of the weeds, into the vision. This is where you get lofty. You start talking about where you want to go and what success looks like for you. And then you want to wrap up with the 3 reasons to invest, and always, always end by saying thank you. Not only because it's good manners, right? But it's also signals to the investors that your pitch is over. So these are our 13 key slides for how to pitch. And I want to thank you for listening. Let's go to how to increase engagement. So, these investors are hearing pitches all day, every day. They're looking for reasons to say no. So how can you engage with them in ways that other entrepreneurs are not? First, jokes. Not everybody's a comedian, but humor makes you human. for others, right? So you can make a joke about yourself, you can, get them smiling, you got them engaged even more deeply. Question and response. So if you are not a natural pitch person and you struggle sometimes to keep people's attention, what you can use is what's called a question response style, because you are the shepherd of your flock, right? You are up on stage, you've got the mic, you got the clicker, the screens, the slides behind you, and all eyes are on you. Now you may be in a room full of, the world's most successful business people, but they may not have any idea of what you're doing, and they will need to learn. They're looking to you for expertise. So how can you help them work through that with a question response style? I'll give you some examples. So, with your pitch, you say, okay, so what's the problem? The problem today is that a lot of entrepreneurs are trying to pitch, but they're just not getting the story across, right? The entrepreneurs are pitching, on average 30 investors, and there's 1,000 new entrepreneurs every month. This is a big problem, right? The solution to the problem is a 13-slide simplified deck, right? But let me give you a demo. So here's my pitch for how to pitch. And then I'm sure you're now wondering, who's the team behind this? Let me introduce you to Celia, Bob, and so, right? So you set the questions up and then you knock them down. So again, the investor or the audience, they don't have time to reach for their phone, because you're essentially telling them what they should be interested in and what questions they should be asking, and then answering them right after another. And there's some simple psychology around sort of satisfying people's needs in a very sort of natural way through this question response style that keeps people engaged throughout the presentation. So we really like that question response style. It definitely works. Another way to gather people's attention are dramatic pauses, right? It gets people wondering what's going to happen next. A little bit theatrical, but that's okay. Emphasis, right? You can make an emphasis with your voice, your tone. You can also step to the audience. You can sort of hold up your phone and say, hey, put your phones down. You're really going to want to listen to this next point I'm going to make, right? But there's ways to use emphasis to keep people's attention and specifically focus them on important things. Fifth thing, you can engage the audience, ask a question. You want to make sure you're asking the right kind of question. You don't want to ask, how was your last dispensary experience? You want to ask a question that's more like, raise your hand if you weren't happy with your previous dispensary experience, okay? So asking the right kind of question is very important there. And the last thing is body language, right? You want to close yourself off. You don't want to turn your back to the audience, which I've seen many, many times, right? You want to make sure you're open, you're not too busy with your hands and your body, and you're making sure that when you're presenting, you're not a distraction, you're something that people want to focus on. And don't forget, there's some good rules for presenting, right? Don't do a live demo. That's why I say do a screen capture video when you're doing a demo of your software that you're narrating. Don't say, hey, we're going to go live to it so I can show you how it works. Because it's like Murphy's Law. If something can go wrong, it will. And the last thing you want to be doing is pitching your business and do a demo and then have it not work. That is not the message you want to send to investors. 16:9 is the aspect ratio of the modern PowerPoint. And that is the aspect ratio that most presenting events will utilize. So create your slides with that aspect ratio. Nothing smaller than a 14-point font. Remember, investors, what's the profile of most venture capital and angel investors? Pale, stale, and male, right? They're older white gentlemen who probably don't have good vision. So don't put tiny fonts on there. Fewer words, fewer numbers, the better. PowerPoint. PowerPoint's like speaking English, right? It's the most common language, common presenting software. I love Prezi. I love all the other options, but you need to be ready to put your slides into PowerPoint if you're going to be going out and raising capital. If it's an event, get there early to know the room, right? Show up like before you go on, get to know the AV folks, preview your slides so that the fonts, you used, and hopefully they're standard fonts. Like I always recommend Arial, Times New Roman, right? Those fonts are in every computer. That you haven't used some funny font that's going to show up in a Gaelic, right? And it's going to go from 5-point to 50-point, and your slides are going to be a mess. It's your duty, it's your job to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success when you're presenting and look good, right? I mean, the truth is, if you walk out there in your pajamas and you've lost a shoe, the perception will be this person maybe doesn't have it together. And if you're trying to have an investor make an investment in a company in you want to make sure that you're presenting yourself well. You will be judged. And then finally, know your audience. If you're investing in you're pitching at a venture capital firm, you better have done your research on who the partners are and associates, who the players are in the room, and also their portfolio. And understand how your company fits into their strategy and their portfolio, right? Have they already invested in your number one competitor? Are you going to go there and tell them all your secrets? Do you understand that they only have 2 managing directors and 1 analyst, and that they might not have the resources to due diligence your company in a week and write you a check the next, right? So understand what you're dealing with there. So that's how to pitch. And that's a presentation, just an example of one presentation that we will give in the CanopyBoulder program. So, we've got some more questions in here. I'm going to sort of jump to it. So let's see. What will my cost be I can expect over the 13 weeks? So, we're making an investment of $120,000 in each company. So the idea of that investment is to not only provide capital to cover the expenses of at least 2 members of each team to come and reside in Boulder, Colorado for 13 weeks, but it's also designed to help you bring in more people or pay for development or go pay for that booth at that critical trade show that's going to help you launch your business, right? It's an investment. And so there's no cost for the program. We don't make you pay for the program. It's all part of the investment, okay? So you'll have 120K to spend on whatever you need to execute. Let's see. Does the CanopyBoulder have interest in hemp fiber and herd products and processing as well? We think there's a lot of potential in the supply chain of hemp, but we've got to find business, and for all the businesses, there needs to be something unique about it, whether that's intellectual property or a team that has a special reason to be successful over their competitors. Just investing in a processing facility that is going to be processing hemp or fiber or whatnot is probably not going to do it for us. We're going to look for something different, right? So example is this license that we are invested in, licensed business we're invested in China, right? China is a huge market, not only domestically in China, but it's also most nutrients are produced in China and distributed throughout the world. So the team has a joint venture on the ground already in place. They have won the license. Like there's a lot of things they're doing right. We think there's a big opportunity there. For example, another company that we invested in the CBD hemp space is a company called Weller, and they have infused sparkling beverages and infused snacks with CBD. This team has done it before. They are entrepreneurs that have been successful in the natural and organic food space, and they are taking all that expertise, the understanding of how beverage distribution works, the relationships they have with venture capital firms and distributors and brokers, and just understanding what's going to be required when they get an order for 3,000 cases in a Whole Foods. What cooperative advertising comes with that? How many free cases do they need to give, right? What kind of in-store sampling do they need? And they've modeled that into their plan. So yes, a sparkling beverage infused with CBD is not unique, but the team is, okay? Let's see. How is the 120,000 dispersed? So what we'll do is we will negotiate the 20K in the form of a stock purchase agreement. And in exchange for the 20K, we get very Techstars-like terms, 6 to 9.5% common stock equity. So it's not preferred equity, it's common stock. And then we do a 100K convertible note with a $2.5 million valuation cap. This is, again, the same as Techstars. Again, we're trying to follow, and we've always tried to follow very standard terms. Certainly some of the language in the investment docs we need to tweak per the needs of the cannabis industry, but we're trying to be very market standard there with our investment. The 100, when we sign the docs, we will wire over, 10, 15K. And then when you arrive in person on the first day, we will fund the rest of the balance of that investment. Are you strict on convertibles, or do you consider safes? Great question. So convertible notes, and there are also these things called safes. Convertible notes are more standard in the market than safe notes. The difference is very simple. The safe note is not debt. It's a promise for equity. A convertible note is debt, right? That's going to accumulate interest. We've stuck to convertible notes not only because they accomplish the same thing that safes do, but it's also debt. So if things go south, investors like to see that if there's going to be a distribution liquidation, that the investor is going to get some money back. So safes are also a very West Coast thing. Not a lot of other areas in the United States or around the world where safe notes are popular or preferred. In fact, most investors prefer convertible notes. And you want to do the best thing for your company, but at the same time, you need to meet investors halfway. And convertible notes are just more of a standard thing for investors. There's going to be fewer investors are going to be feeling like the convertible note's an exceptional thing, as it would be if it was a safe note. Yeah, okay, let's see. I have an ancillary cannabis company that already has launched. In order to join CanopyBoulder, do you take any part of the IP? So that's a good question. We're investing in companies, right? And we're going to take early stage risk in these companies, in your company, and we want to participate in the upside. If the IP, a patent, let's say it's a patent, is not part of the company and owned by the founder, that's going to be an exceptional thing, right? So part of what we're trying to do with each team is make sure that we're staging them up for the greatest chances of success. And that would mean having IP assignment to the company. Investors are just, if you don't have the IP as part of the company, that's just another hurdle for investors to get over. And look, you want to be talking about the positive things, not the negative things with investors. So market standard to roll that IP into the company. Will you accept a medical cannabis company with THC from a country where THC is legal? Unlikely. We have not made any investments in businesses that touch the plant in the United States or in a foreign country. Okay. So just be really clear there. Let's see. I don't see any more questions. Maybe we want to open up and unmute everyone so that they can ask questions of us directly. Celia or Bob, can you unmute that? I'm not hearing anybody yet. Celia or Bob, did you guys unmute everyone? Okay, I just unmuted everyone. Maybe I should mute. Yeah, I'm gonna mute everybody back, and I'm just gonna make it so that the participants can unmute themselves. All right. So if you have a question, please do unmute yourself now, and let us know if you have a question.
That is like a funny. Turn the music down. Hello.
Okay, Weed Her BHQ, I hear you. Do you have any question?
Well, yeah, that was not you. Actually answered it. I created a cannabis social platform for the masses, and my issue is right now my go-to-market strategy is in the illicit market. Because there are so many people in that market right now. I'm trying to transfer over into getting in the legal market right now.
Hmm.
And I was just interested in knowing, like, because I made this platform, um, will there be some like type of hindrance for investors to see what I've been doing? And they're like, oh, okay, you have all these users on your platform, but this is kind of like you're in an illicit market still. And are you trying to go legal? And I'm like, yes, I am. The other thing is I actually, I'm part of the Sacramento Go Green program in California. So I am an equity recipient. So I'm getting into the plant touching aspect of it and delivery. And so since I have both sides, I have the software side and the software tech side, and I have the plant touching side, will that be a problem?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, I need to probably learn more about the software side, but if it's facilitating and the illegal or illegal, the illicit markets business, then we wouldn't, and I think you won't find investors that want to invest in that. I don't know
Well,
specifically.
it's not like that. It's the simple fact that Instagram and Facebook, they've kicked a lot of the users off of the platforms.
Hmm.
And I mean the illegal to legal companies, period.
Okay.
So I made a platform for all of these guys to basically go to, because it's like freedom of speech. You can get on there and you can talk about weed and do whatever you want, to a point, but you know, Instagram and Facebook have kind of like shut all of these avenues down, and the social media and advertisement, aspects of it. So I created somewhere for everybody to go to right now.
Hmm. Understood. Yeah, I don't think there shouldn't be a problem with that, but investors, when investors are going to invest in business where the entrepreneur is fully focused on that business. If there are other businesses that you're running, what you are essentially doing are creating lifestyle businesses. You're not creating businesses that will most likely be able to take on investment from investors because they'll always be wondering, where is his focus, right? Is he focusing on the one that I invested in, or is he focusing on the one that he's also doing over there? Right? And it's hard for investors to get comfortable with that. So my advice is to pick a business that you want to be in and go full gas on that one, right? If you're going to bring in capital from investors.
Well, the problem with that, with you saying that, is not every entrepreneur has money. So we have to figure out a way in order to make money to get from point A to point B. So when I go and make these different companies, and I'm actually making money off of the company that I have right now, um, it puts me in this position. I don't have a regular 9 to 5 job. So I'm on like hustle mode to take care of my business and to
Yep.
feed my family. So with
Yep.
that said, an investor, unless he's coming in with like, I'm going to fully, back you and fund you, I got to do what I got to do until basically somebody really steps up. A lot of investors don't understand that. And not a
No,
lot of
and
people come in
yeah, what
place
I'd
that
say
have,
is that,
you
an investor that's going to put in money, right? You have a choice to make when you have an investor. Like if we were going to invest in your social media platform, I would, we're going to make an investment in the terms of that investment. It's going to say that you are going to be fully focused on this and not be pursuing other ventures. Otherwise, it's sort of like, you know, how would I know that you're not, working on the other business when we want you to focus on this one? And that's your choice, right? That's a fully your choice, but you're going to find that from investors. If you're not focused on the business that they're investing in, they're not going to invest.
yeah,
But good question.
thank you.
Any other questions?
This is Michael. I had just a quick question on the application. There's a multiple choice for the types of businesses that you're getting into. And could you just give me an idea of what you mean by hard science?
Hard science is going to be like a tissue culture propagation, like genetic development, hard science is going to be analyzing nutrients and how they're going to be absorbed by plants. Maybe a film on a solar panel or a film on a panel for a greenhouse, where you're working on hard science that then you're going to be able to develop that science and license it possibly to other companies to commercialize. Does that help?
It does, yeah. I was just trying to figure out where our business fits into those categories, and I guess if we chose the wrong category, that wouldn't be I just want to be sure we communicate clearly and completely transparent with you in terms of and I can just put in the other and tell you what we're going to do, what it's called, and maybe a safer place to put it.
That's the best. That's a good path forward, is to utilize the space in the open fields to sort of very clearly describe what the business is. And just so you know, when you fill out those forms, an email is generated and sent to everyone on the staff. So we are filtering through these applications as they come in. So you can almost guarantee that when you put an application or request for an application, it's going to be reviewed probably in the next 24 hours, if not sooner.
So as we process the application, some of the stuff that we'd want to put in there, it's going to take more than a given day to do that. Is it saved as we put the information in? So if our system crashes and we have to go back in there, we can just go back in through our email. Is that correct?
You know what? That's a great question. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know if Celia's on, that she can answer, or Bob can answer that question, but I don't know the answer there.
Okay.
Hey, it's Celia Daly here. So to answer your question, I'm sorry, what was the question again?
If the form saves their information.
Oh, yes. So the form doesn't. It gets a little funky. My suggestion is always to kind of go in there, grab those questions out, and put them in a Word document and kind of work on it in a Word document. And then when you're happy with it, you can go back in and sort of copy and paste. That's probably the safest way to handle it.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great feedback. I know it's like we got two other partners that we're working together to make certain we're clear, and all of us are represented in our perspectives. So if it's okay, I'd like to also email that to them as well, and we all kind of put together a combined thought in regards to the questionnaire, the application. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I would just say work on it all as one doc, and then when you're done, you just drop it in there.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Let's see. We had a question in the chat. Good question. Is there any issue if my teammates are not also owners of the company at this time? Well, it's an interesting question, and it's a bit of a can of worms. But if you're an early stage company and you can't pay people market rates, what your currency you have is your equity, right? You can create an employee stock option pool and give those team members ownership. And I don't know why you wouldn't. It's certainly a good thing to do, right? To keep everyone's interests aligned, and you can stage it out. You can do a very traditional stock grant to an employee. So you can award the shares and you can have them vest over a period of 4 years. You can also have a 1 year cliff, meaning that if you start working with this person and after 2 months or after 10 months or after 11 months and 15 days, you realize this is not a fit, that cliff allows you to let that person go and retrieve back the equity that you awarded to them that did not vest, right? So my advice would be to not be stingy on the equity, but use it to bring people in to get engaged in your company. And with that 1 year cliff, you have a trial period. So you're not going to be feeling like that equity went away and the person didn't work out. You'll be able to get it back. I see here a question: are investors investing in the blockchain space? Investors are investing in the blockchain space, just not a lot of investing in the blockchain space in cannabis. There's so many simple problems that need to be solved with simple solutions. And sometimes things like blockchain, more sexy, quote unquote, sexy technologies are just not needed, right? And blockchain very specifically has a lot of great applications in supply chain and checking and keeping everything very orderly in a business. And the immutable ledger is great, but sometimes you don't need blockchain to do what you want to do. The other challenge with blockchain is getting investors over the hump of understanding what's going on. There's only in a pool of a world of investors, and only a fraction of them that truly understand blockchain and how it might be applied to any given market, right? So by doing blockchain, you might be giving yourself a bit of a hurdle to jump over to get investors to understand what you're doing and to ultimately say yes and invest. But we do think there's some really cool applications there. Just we haven't seen any companies in the cannabis industry doing ancillary tech be wildly successful with blockchain applications yet. Could a hemp rolling paper company participate in your program for funding? The answer is yes. But again, there's not much of a moat around a company that's producing hemp rolling paper. I could imagine that an entrepreneur with the right motivation and connections could, or even without the connections, they could find a hemp paper supplier and develop, get a company that's going to make the hemp rolling paper for them and then brand it and sell it. So from a unique aspect, the team would need to be exceptional, have experience getting rolling paper into every convenience store and head shop and dispensary in the United States. They'd done it before. They knew all the deals. They had the relationships with the manufacturers, right? They would have this great advantage and head start. So that's what we'll be looking for with a hemp rolling paper company. Do you require LLCs to be structured as an S corp? What we because we're doing a stock investment, we want the companies to convert to a C corp, right? So if you're going to be raising capital, you're going to need to be a C corp, right? That is, again, just the way of the world with venture capital investment. So if you haven't started or formed your company, I might recommend going straight to a C corp. Otherwise, you got to set up as an LLC, pay for that, and then pay for it again to convert into a C corp, which isn't hard. It's not a big, complicated mess, but it is something that needs to be done to take on investment.
Hey, Patrick, I have a question. It's Michael again. We are a high-tech company, and eventually we will need more than 100, not to sound greedy, but just from a capitalization perspective, we're going to need more than 120K to buy all the instrumentation and the equipment to be able to truly get started. So what's the next step for us if we are accepted and we move down this road with CanopyBoulder?
Yeah. I mean, fundraising would, a plan for and a very acute and clear understanding of what's going to be required to raise capital for your business is going to be probably a big part or a component of that customized program, right? And if you're hardware, if your business has high capital expenditure requirements, equipment, things like that, I'll be honest with you, it's going to be harder. Investors, it's totally unreasonable, but they don't, in their minds, they don't want to pay salaries. They don't want to invest in anything that isn't, light and leased and on a subscription. They're going to sort of shy away from businesses that have big capital requirements. And if the business does require big capital expenditures like lab equipment or machinery or things like that, the investors might want to do a loan for that type of capital requirement. So the simplest way to sort of express this or demonstrate this is like a business that's going to do a cultivation, right? Maybe they're going to do a hemp cultivation. If they need to buy property or they need to buy a warehouse, and they need to buy some big piece of equipment, that may be something that the company raises debt specifically for, right? So the investor can mitigate some of the risk of investment by having that investment made through a loan be backed by an asset that they, if you defaulted on the loan, that they would own and they'd be able to get their money back, right? So sometimes you can say, all right, we're going to raise money for this and this way, and we're going to raise debt for the things that are assets.
Okay, is that something that you make a decision or judgment on in terms of what we would say in the application, or because we have a pro forma, we're at a point where we're almost to a point we can sit down with some investors. But again, we saw Bob at the Indo Expo this weekend, and we really thought it was a great opportunity to reach out to you guys to see where Canopy would fit into our new business and get us started and accelerate us into the world of this space, this new technology space.
Yeah, yeah. Startups are like flowers. Like no two are the same. So they all have different. The team may be different, maybe further along, and they don't need certain elements, or the business have different capital requirements. That's why we don't have just a standard program. We also have a custom program for each team that we're checking on and checking in with you every week to make sure that
Patrick, we lost you.
Are we back?
You're back.
Am I back
You're back.
now? Sorry about that. But what I was saying was that every team is different. They have different needs. So we're going to work with them. We're not going to say, look, everybody needs to raise $500,000 in a convertible note, right? That's not going to be how we approach it. We're going to look at the needs of your business based on the financial model, your goals, and your timeline. We're going to say, look, you need to raise this amount of money and this timeline to stay solvent. And we want to help you figure out the best way to get that capital in.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? We're coming up on an hour. Let's see. Does CanopyBoulder take a long-term interest in companies? Yes, absolutely. The funny thing about investments nowadays is the term of investment, an average term is going to be somewhere between like 7 and 10 years, typically before an investor gets an exit or their money back. So that's, I think, longer than the average length of a marriage in the United States today. So yeah, we are in for the long term. Obviously, if you're an early stage investor, you're in for longer than a Series D or a mezzanine debt investor, right? Who's going to invest in right before an exit and get maybe 2x. We're really aiming for 10x and beyond, right, in our investments. So yeah, we are interested in being invested in companies for the long term. Any other questions? These questions have been great, so I really appreciate them all. There's no bad questions. There's no stupid questions. There's just questions that go unasked. So let me make a last call for questions. Bob, Celia, is there any questions that we get that you hear asked a lot that I haven't answered?
I think that the key here is we would recommend, if you haven't applied for the accelerator, that you apply so that we can understand what questions you might have and get them answered very quickly. So again, if you haven't applied, I recommend you apply as soon as possible. We're looking at cutting off the applications on October 25th. Which is pretty soon, and timing on decisions for the winter accelerator, we're calling it, which starts January 13th, is we want to have those top candidates kind of identified by November 15th, and then the top 10 that we will actually be bringing into the program identified by the end of November. As far as common questions we get, I think a lot of them have been asked, and that's great. Really appreciate those questions. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know and we can get those resolved. But I would just say, if you're thinking about applying, do so as soon as possible so that we can get you into the process.
Great. Well, if that's it, what I'd say, that was what I'd say to wrap is, you know, entrepreneurships can be a lonely journey. It's great to surround yourself with people who are going through the same thing, and people that have gone through it before, like Bob, right? Who's been there, done that with startups for a very long time, right? And people who have great connections into the industry, like Celia, right? Who talks to investors all day long and is essentially a matchmaker between investors and the companies in our portfolio. And folks like me, who are not going to sugarcoat it for you, right? Obviously, we want to celebrate your successes, but we're going to try to highlight and identify places where your plan or it has some work to be done on it, so that when you get into the spotlight at the table, in the conference room, and you're talking to people that could have a meaningful impact on the success of your business, that you're ready, right? That you haven't not heard the question that they're going to ask. You have already prepared the plan or the documents that they're interested in, right? So when they ask you talk to us about your competitive landscape, you nail it, right? When they ask you, when they ask you what kind of return they'll get on their investment if all goes according to plan, you have that answer, right? You've done the work, and that you stand out above and beyond the other folks that they talk to, right? And the only way you get there is hard work and working with people like CanopyBoulder that do this all the time. And the other thing that I'll say is that we put our money where our mouth is. Right now, seed capital in the cannabis industry is evaporating. Most of the VC funds are looking at growth stage companies. They want to see $50,000 in monthly recurring revenue, or some clear path, not projected, but a very clear path to $1 million in annual revenues. So there's fewer early stage investors, and that's where we focused our energy, right? Not only with our own capital, but with our network of investors coming in to support companies that graduate from our program. So we want to help. We want to get you set up to be successful, and we want to lean into what you're doing. So if that sounds good to you, then we'd encourage you to apply and get into the process of joining us in our winter 2020 program starting on January 13th in Boulder, Colorado. So yeah, thank you all for being on, and we will be reviewing your applications as they come in. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day. Bye now.